Condoleezza Rice was on the Carlos Watson show, and she had some thoughts on Trump and had some thoughts as far as where we are as a country. Condoleezza Rice, the woman who famously, as people were dying in Hurricane Katrina, she was at a Broadway show in New York City and shopping for Ferragamo shoes. Just want to remind you all of that. I believe she voted for Trump. She wants to be. I don't lie to me. She wants to be analytical and not emotional. Well, she has the privilege to be analytical and not emotional. I am emotional. Forgive me. Amisha Cross, I'll let you take this. What are your thoughts on Miss Condi Rice?
So there are two things here. One, I'm gonna go from the back to the front. The last comment that she made regarding this historic unemployment and people who are out of work for a long time, a lot of Republicans note that, and it's absolutely incorrect. First and foremost, people who have been unemployed for over a year aren't even counted in the unemployment numbers. So there's no real way of tracking long-term unemployment turned into employment. So her saying that or trying to back this up by a Trump policy just it doesn't add up. It's not seen in the data. It's not even counted. So again, that's just a rhetoric talking point that Republicans like to use. But in addition to that, she described in the beginning basically how every single authoritarian regime and dictator has risen to power. You have a group of people that feel disaffected. You have a group of people who've been promised things and have, heard that this other group has come and taken their way of life, that some outsider group or immigrant group has come and they've taken their jobs, and that they're basically turning around the things that they believe in and their value system. That's how we got Hitler. That's how we get Mussolini. That's how we got dictators from across the globe. It is very frustrating to hear that poised as something that's positive when we know the ends of that level of marketing, the ends of that level of creating your campaign. And I'll give it to the Trump camp. In 2016, they created a campaign based on disaffected white people who assumed that Blacks and Latinos were coming to take their stuff, because finally in America, they were seeing that they had to compete, that they weren't actually going to be handed everything, and that civil rights mattered, and that people were taking to the streets, and that they were fighting for their rights. That was the frustration among white people. They were also seeing that old white folks were dying. And along with old white people dying was a rise of young minorities. And I think that that was one of the things that helped to drive this insanity around the fact that we've got to save our way of life. That's no different than the rise of, again, authoritarian regimes we've seen across the globe, and the rise of populism that we've seen across the globe. She noted that as something that was positive, when in every instance we've seen it, it has been extremely negative, and people have suffered and many have died.
Let them know it.
Yes, Amisha. What do you think, Chris? This is your southern sister. I know you're from Georgia. She's in Alabama. What do you think? She was raised in the Jim Crow South, and she made history in politics. What are your thoughts?
I'm glad you're bringing that up, because if we're talking about a Forrest Gump type of life, Condoleezza Rice has that. Like, it's crazy how you could be a woman who knows the young girls who were bombed at the church in Alabama and then grow up into someone who is a true Republican. You know how it says 98% of Black women vote for Democrats? Well, that 2%, that's Condoleezza Rice. Now, how does that actually happen? I don't know, but we found her. Silk. And got to bring in Diamond and Silk too. Oh boy, they're just another thing. But I will note this, as a graduate of the University of Georgia Law School, and as a big Georgia football fan, and Condoleezza Rice does sit on that committee, don't hold it against Georgia at all. We still want to be in the playoffs. And I've met Condoleezza Rice on several occasions. The last time was at the PGA Tour when Tiger Woods actually won in the Masters in Augusta, believe it or not. And she actually came up to me, probably because I was one of the 6 Black people actually at the Masters tournament. And she was actually very nice. But when it comes down to it, Condoleezza Rice is a Republican. And for her to actually uphold Trump, let's not get it twisted. She's a smart Republican, but she's still a Republican. For her to actually say that Trump was the effective president of actually getting people around, what is she trying to gain from that? Who is she really talking to? Why is she making these political moves or political gestures of saying, I'm aligning myself with Trump? Forget about you being a political scientist or saying that you're just trying to be analytical. Let's talk about what the real reason of what you're trying to do, because Trump was a horrible president who brought out the worst in this country. Are you okay with that, Condoleezza Rice? And again, if you are, you still stay in that 2% no matter what. But are you trying to look for another political move later on down the road? Or are people really whispering in your ear about some sort of office that you guys should take later on?
To
Hey,
Chris's
listen.
point, Clay, I think
Go
that the
ahead.
interesting thing here is that Condoleezza is probably one of the brightest people in terms of not only political strategy, but also understanding of history that this country has. Now, granted,
Yeah,
yes, she sits on the
she
other
knows her
side of the
history.
aisle, and yes, it makes her very potent because of the stances that she's taken. But what gain does she have to stand out and to proclaim Donald Trump as something anything other than what he actually was and still stands to be? I think this speaks to the continued resonance and the strength that Donald Trump has, that stronghold over the Republican Party, where even the stalwarts, heck, the Bush family, George W. Bush does not support Donald Trump. She served under him. It's very interesting that she would come out and make these statements, especially considering that she was seen more as a Reagan-esque type of Republican, or type of Republican who people might have assumed, maybe not vocally, but would have been a part of the Lincoln Project, then would be someone who came out and made these statements. Heck, she didn't talk about him in these glowing terms when he was running, nor when he was in office. She was very mute on Donald Trump. So now she decides to do it after January 6th, after the repeated calls of election fraud where there was no fraud to be seen, after all of the chaos and mayhem that this man wreaked over the country, and then points to, without actually naming a single policy, the fact that she thought that it was the words, it was how he presented it that was the problem. But he had great policies. Yet one of the greatest political minds of our most recent decades and generation cannot name one single policy that was this great policy, platform that he had.
And listen, let's be clear. I know we talk about the Diamond and Silks and the Candace Owens. Condoleezza Rice was much more dangerous than them. This is somebody who had power. I know folks look back on Condoleezza Rice and Colin Powell and they say, "Oh my gosh, they aren't the current crop of Black Republicans that we see." Weapons of mass destruction, 9/11. I mean, Condoleezza Rice was behind that. Let's not forget the kind of power she had, what she did with her power. Extremely destructive. And listen, I know folks think I'm crazy here, but you never know. Hey, that might be Tim Scott's running mate in 2024. That might be just the kind of thing Republicans want because they love black folks who are upholding white supremacy. But let me say this. I think the part that really gets to me is Trump, according to her, touched a nerve, touched the hearts of people. So did George Wallace. So did Richard Nixon, who was a stone cold racist. So did Ronald Reagan, who called African organizations fighting back against apartheid monkeys, who tried to veto the 1987 Civil Rights Act, who waged a war on poor people, who waged a war on black folks, who pushed the welfare queen narrative. He touched people's hearts too. Who Ronald Reagan opens his 1980 general election campaign in Neshoba County, Mississippi, where 4 civil rights workers are killed. It's called the Southern Strategy. That's the heart that Ronald Reagan touched. Your boy Bush did the same thing. That they're using the same Southern strategy tactics that was used thanks to Barry Goldwater. So that's what the heart is. And how could you, as a black woman from Birmingham, Alabama, not know what that tactic is unless, to Chris's point, you know what the tactic is and you want to make sure you're a part of that tactic. You want to make sure you're a part of this kind of chaos and disorder. And like you said, Amisha, I couldn't believe she's bringing up unemployment rates as if Bush, her boss, didn't give Obama a horrific economy. I'm not being some hyper whatever Democrat. Bush put us into a recession. Bush put us there, and Obama had to clean it up. And then Bush's daddy put us in a recession, and Clinton had to clean it up. And now we had a great economy, and your one-term president manages to destroy it all because of the way that he handled the coronavirus. This is like basic 101 information here. This is it. But I guess for her to concede that would mean that she'd have to concede her own failures in that Bush administration. And that's a little bit too much. accountability. That's what it appears. You have a comment, Chris?
All right, I was going to add on. Again, we all recognize that Condoleezza Rice is a very smart person. I'm not saying man, I'm not saying woman, I'm not saying black, I'm not saying white. She's smart and she knows what she's doing and she's been systematic. You can't get to the cabinet level as a black woman not being strategic, especially in politics. So there is another story behind all of this altogether. And you pointed out very well, Clay, about the other people that she's talking about, because maybe that is the next play. Maybe it is having the next person who's going to touch the hearts, or what I say, the dark hearts of others, and bringing them back out to the polls.
Why got to be dark, Chris?
Yeah, this is ultra woke here, right?
I'll play with you. I'll play with you. Go ahead.
No, I got you. And hey, let's talk about what she's really trying to do. She's really trying to focus on and touch those other people, not calling out Trump for the worst things that he's done or encouraging that type of behavior, but condoning it altogether. And that's what Democrats need to be scared of. Because if you have Condi on the, if you have her on the campaign trail, oh, she's going to be dangerous.
And that's it. Condi is loyal to the Republican Party to no end.
Oh, yes.
And she recognizes what resonates with the base. People acted like it was just a small group of people that Trump was riling up. No, that group is the Republican Party. The Trumpites are the Republican Party. She knows what to say. She knows what modes to play in. She knows that the same messaging is winning Republican election after Republican election at the state level. She knows this is the key to midterm victories. She has to lock it down. And I think that for someone who's been a member of the Republican Party and such a frontal member for so long, because remember, her relationship didn't start with George W. Bush. It was long before him. The understanding has to be that she's willing to put it all on the line because she knows that there's a win on the other end. That is the scariest part. This is where our country is. This is where the Republican Party is. And no matter how many Lincoln projects or small versions of the Lincoln Project emerge, at the end of the day, the Republican Party writ large is the party of Trump. It is the party that Condoleezza is out here willing to stake her claim in and put her feet to the pavement for, and basically reiterate all of these things that Donald Trump did that were demonstratively horrible for our democracy.
So we're still trying to clean it up.
Right, and my question is, Colin Powell wasn't like, "Hey, sis, let's we gotta go. This is a problem." He said, "Like, this is why are we still doing this?" Because Colin Powell was like, "I want nothing to do with it." And like we said before, we know President Bush loves black women. He loves Michelle. What is he doing with Condi? Like, hey, Condi, what are you doing? Why are you uplifting Donald Trump, who is someone that no one can stand, especially as an intelligent woman altogether? So this is the only other intelligent means of it. It's the last situation or the last option, which is this is a politically strategic move by Condoleezza Rice.